Hey, folks, it's Lindsey Ellison with SPS back in the building for the SPS Edge Show on this Thursday. I got my great co-host, Mr. Terry McCord Jr. I'm so glad he's not trying to renegotiate his contract, because if he did, man, he'd break the bank on us right now, man. He got a leverage going on. I know his agent may be hitting me up later, but Terry, it's so good to continuously have you on this platform. You bring so much to what we're doing. How you doing, man?
Yeah, I guess the only thing that I would want to negotiate is the time, because it's a lot of basketball going on right now, but it's all good though. I mean, this right now is business talking about what we've been watching, so I'm all for it.
Here's the issue I have, and I totally agree with you saying the time, man, is that I'm totally immersed in basketball. You are too. And the bad part is sometimes you can get the wrong impression that this is life all the time when it's not. You're like, oh man, I got this game, I got that game. It feels like heaven. Like, oh man, this could be done in a couple of weeks. And speaking of that, let's give a shout out to the MHSA and what's happening with Michigan high school basketball right now. We are in the throes of the playoff season, man, and it's been numerous games. I gotta give a shout out to Jack Ebling in the media. He said, man, I think you may have gone to more high school basketball team games than any member of the media. I was like, I'll take that. You know what I'm saying? Right. So if I had $1 for every game I went to, I could take us to dinner, Terry. Put it that way, you know. But it has been fortunate, and of course, I can't cover every game as much as I would like to at SBS. I've been able to follow some storylines. Just last night, Hamtramck had to bow out. They took a loss to Orchard Lake St. Mary's, which many believe, and I will concur, may be a hoisting that state championship trophy, led by who I call a nephew, Kareem Rozier. His dad is a very close friend of mine from college days, Elijah Rozier. But Kareem is a Mr. Basketball finalist. He has such poise, man. And one great thing about this Orchard Lake team, I am believing the hype, led by Ted Colbert. Shout out to their assistant coach, Marcus Webster, good guy, is that like Trey McKinney. Oh, man, this kid's a freshman. Oh, man, he was taking shots last night, Terry. I'm talking about the behind the backboard fadeaway with confidence. I mean, he has collegiate athlete poise right now, man. I'm just so blown away by that going forward. Yeah, so I'll just say, man, it was great. And then prior to those games on Monday, it was Hamtramck versus University of Detroit Jesuit. And let me tell you, Sam, Hamtramck in that game, they put the beat down on UD. And it wasn't more than anything. They had a three-headed guard monster, Herschel Marion, Aaron Allen, Omari Allen, the two brothers, man. But their defense, Terry, was something to be praised. And you often hear the terminology, playing the right way. And I don't know how I feel about that term all the time, but let me tell you something. That night, Monday night, in that semifinal regional game, man, they played the right way. They just attacked UAD. You know, shout out to my guy, Ray Hatcher. He's and his son, they're with the family, also with UAD. But it was just great basketball. And we're just seeing that all around. So right now, it looks like the bracket as it relates to Detroit, because I do have a fondness for Detroit. That's my city, as you know. It looks like Cass has made their way out. So what's going to be the matchup on Tuesday? I do know it's going to be De La Salle versus Orchard Lake St. Mary's. It's a Catholic school, a matchup right there. So we coach Todd Colbert versus John Jokic over there. And I can tell you in a minute who Cass is going to be seeing coming off. But there's some good basketball going on. And lastly, what I want to say before I get your thoughts on this, Chauncey Willis Jr. of King High School has been voted the Michigan Gatorade Player of the Year. He's also a finalist for Mr. Basketball. Shout out to him. Shout out to his coach, George Ward, his mom, Carol Bay Bush, childhood friend. It's just some quality basketball going on, man. It's just been so cool, Terry, just getting to know these young people over time. You know, the Chaunceys, the Kareems, because they win, they sit in the winner's chair for the SBS Edge post-game interviews. You get to know these young men, and you can't help but want to root for them. You want to see them be successful, man. So it's been a great experience. I do plan on picking things up again as I glance at the calendar, looking at the semifinals at the Breslin and possibly the finals. Is just a thrown stove, not too far from you, but not too far from me as well. So we'll see. So what has been your take on what you've been hearing with high school basketball and everything that's been going on?
No, one thing I do appreciate about what Detroit does, you get a lot of those like top teams that end up playing each other. I guess you could say that here in the Lansing area too. But it's just really cool to see these top teams and players. You know, you're hearing about them in the city, I'm sure, in Detroit, and then you end up playing them in the district where it counts. You know, so I think that is really cool. We get to see that it's playing in a big venue. That means a lot of people are coming in, a ton of publicity. So I'm really loving Michigan basketball right now. Fans are traveling for district games. Fans are going to regional games. So it's all to amped up because it seems like the importance is back again. I've been hearing that same thing with March Madness. Like everyone felt the lapse of like not being able to play and watch games live because we had to use the high school live. I can't think of the app right now, but we had to watch the games on there because we couldn't be there in person. So
Right.
or it was a limit. So it was really cool to be able to embrace that and fans being able to go there, be next to each other, screaming and cheering for our favorite players. So we just really see, definitely the lapse from last year. But then we get to see how important it is for fans and families to go watch their kids and cheer on their city. So I'm really liking the enthusiasm and the emphasis that's been put this year to really bounce back from last year.
Yeah, we totally took for granted. I want to check a comment right here. Pooh says, Lindsay, a few people have asked with you living in Lansing area, why didn't you take your SBS to any local games? Now, Pooh, is a few people is that you? Listen, here's the thing. As I said at the outset, I would love to cover local games, but I do have scheduling things I have to look at. And also I have relationships with my sponsors. The reality is that I have sponsors out of the metro area who have interest in games being covered in that region. And there's a business aspect to this. Terry and I love to come to you, but we're coming to you based on our sponsors. Speaking of that, right on time, shout out to our sponsors, Horatio Williams and the Horatio Williams Foundation. Don't want to miss that opportunity to shout them out for supporting the podcast. Also, Gilead Sciences as well. And then I'll also go further and shout out Dick's Sporting Good. So it's really the business of SPS. I would love to be there at those local games, but sometimes there's a conflict. I am a father of a 9-year-old, and based on let's just be real, being divorced, I have certain days that I have my daughter, and actually those are Tuesday nights. And we all know, Terry, that's a hoop night, right? But hey, take my baby over a hoop game. You know what I'm saying? That's the only thing that comes before that. And then every other weekend. So it really comes down to a scheduling thing. And Pooh, I can appreciate that. But all I can say is that throughout this AAU season, I'll be out and about. We're working on some things right now to give a little bit more coverage. And again, I would love to be there to support. But I think if the greater Lansing area saw it in their heart to support SPS more, some priorities can be put forth for that. I got another comment right here. What do we have? Albert Mass says, my guys. The irony, though, Pooh, as you say that, is I remember sitting next to Albert, kicking it with Albert when there was basically a quarantine game when Jackson played Everett. And my guy Albert, TJ's guy Albert was sitting right there with us. So I do remember covering the Everett game. Shout out to Trayshawn Adams and whatnot. But I appreciate that. And the reality is that it's really about a scheduling thing, and I have to prioritize my sponsors. And I don't know what to say. What's your take on that, Terry? You got anything to add?
Well, just being with me, like just being in like school, work, I mean, it's kind of hard to fit that stuff in. Usually like Friday or Saturday is like dedicated to family time. But I think for me, I've been at a lot of Eastern games this year. I even caught myself at a Sexton game, Everett game. So like, it's just
how
like,
could you, huh? He said,
for me, it's like Lansing is all, man. Like, I mean, obviously, I cater to Eastern a little bit. But at the end of the day, it's Lansing is all one. I mean, if one school does well, we all see it as we're all doing well. So for me, I've been at a lot of games. I went to the district championship game of Eastern versus Lansing Catholic. That game was really intense. Eastern ended up losing by 2 points. But, man, you could just really feel the city and the pride of Lansing itself. I mean, we got guys from Sexton, Waverly, Everett showing support to the Quakers, trying to battle and get something that hasn't been done since 2013. So I think it's just something where, everybody just kind of supports local right now. And I think, eventually I do see you coming here, but it's all process. It takes time. The more publicity you get and the more we grow, we're going to end up being here. Maybe we host up. Because I've been seeing a lot of people, man, this Mason group comes and I think it's their own thing. and they prop up like their tables, and they got like their radio station right there, and they got free reign. They report on the game right there, and I think a lot of other schools do that as well. So I mean, it's all in the works. I'm sure it's taken some time. I've heard fans from Mason saying they've done that for years. It kind of passes on. So I mean, it's really a long game. I mean, you're not looking to do this, and be done next year. Like, it's something that's going to take time to grow. So I'm just really excited for it. But it's, surely, but it takes time. You got to get the support. And right now, the support is in Detroit, and eventually you'll come to Lansing, Grand Rapids. You'll be all through the mitten.
I appreciate that, Terry. And I'm also going to add that to Pooh's point. I mean, I'm not poo-pooing the point. I made a little joke, but I just wanted to say, right now, Terry can agree. You can look it up. Top teams are out of Metro Detroit, with the exception of Williamson. And let me cover that real quick. There was a Williamson game I wanted to cover, and I had a conflict. But guess what? I covered Williamson in Metro Detroit at the North Farmington 3-day extravaganza. I sat down I was there with those guys. So I look at it as, hey, I'm covering your team. I just may not be covering it, in that area. So, I appreciate that comment, Pooh. Believe me, I do. And the goal is to get SPS, to be represented as many places as possible. But I would encourage local sponsors to, say, hey, man, we want to get some representation right here, and I can prioritize that. So I appreciate your comments on that, too. Shout out to Albert Mask again. You can only go with the love at, Albert Mask, hit him with it. That's my God. Hey, you know what I'm saying? And be honest, somebody told me a long time ago, you love those that love you. And I'm not saying I don't get no love in the area, but hey, it is what it is. And believe me, gas prices right now, it costs to get, put SPS on the road. But I'm totally open to it. And to be honest, I got to be totally honest, with the exception of a few coaches in the area, I've had a little bit better reception in the Metro Detroit area, in the Greater Lansing area. I'll be trying to get at guys, say, hey, can I get with you? Can I get with your team? And it's like, hey, no, I'm not going to force the issue. So again, Pooh, respect your question. I appreciate that. And I hope my answer was helpful to you. But the goal is to be out here. And actually, last thing I'll say, not necessarily during basketball season, but I'm waiting to hear some information about some grant resources that may allow me to do a little bit more in the metro, the mid-Michigan area. If that's the case, we'll see that. So with that being said, I appreciate that. We're going to keep things moving. I want to shout out Baller School. I did see a comment, and we're going to make sure we get to that latter part of the show. That's an excellent comment that he brought up, and we'll talk about that in a second. But Terry, I also want to be, before we go, Albert Mass, great question. I talked to Jack Allen about this. How you guys like the Williamson team? Hey, they're doing great. From what I recall, they're undefeated. They got a 7-footer. Big fella is doing it. They got Division I players. But here's the thing. My concern with any team that's undefeated is, what are you going to do when you get punched in the mouth in a game and everything is on the line? We love to talk about undefeated seasons, but talk about if something end up happening, that's it. My guy Ray Kelser say SPS is big in the D. Ride or die. Yeah, Ray. That is the famed Raymond Kelser, basketball official extraordinaire. If you have the benefit of him covering one of your games, you've got a great thing going. But Ray, I appreciate you letting cats know, man. That's where it is. But hey, I want to be able to make it up here, but I come down to the D and the love is there. But Ray, I appreciate you, brother. Appreciate you through and through. All right. But yeah, Terry, what's your thoughts on the Williamson team?
I think they've had, obviously they're undefeated, but they've had a favorable matchups in their districts. A little bit of an easier route. Lansing Catholic team they beat, I wasn't really impressed with them when they played Sexton in their first game. I wasn't impressed with them for the district final with Eastern. So, they won, but, to get that far. And
what do you mean you say you wasn't impressed? Talk about that a little bit more.
Lansing Catholic, man, just this year, it's not the usual Lansing Catholic teams I'm used to seeing back when I was playing in the years before. Just a lot of inexperience. But, a lot of that could be the COVID issue. But, Williamson, they're just very experienced. They have Mason Dock, Jacob Wallace, Big Max in the middle. They're really experienced. They're very seasoned, I guess they would say in the sports world. You got a seasoned athletes. They've been there for a while. Because I played against 3 of those guys when I was in my senior year, and they're playing at a high level. So, I think that the experience is there. That they've been in the AAU world. Jacob Wallace going to Toledo, and then Mason going to Baltimore County, the team that beat Virginia in March Madness years ago. So I mean, there are a lot of players that are going places, but I mean, they're always working. They work out with Abdullah. They're always getting it in over there by the riverfront. I see them all the time. They just know their goal. And it helps, too, to have Riley Lewis, Tom Lewis, their coach's son, that made it to the Brez, I believe, or might have been fell short, but I think he made it to the Brez. And just the experience of knowing what it takes to win is in Williamson. I think they have a great shot at competing for the state championship.
Yeah, I appreciate Albert Mass. He's right on task, right on time with you, Terry. He says, Willie always been a tough team to beat. I would love to see what their summers and practice are like. But the irony, I can't help but put this out here, and this is to throw no shade. If you go and check the SPS Edge YouTube channel, you can see my interview with Coach Lewis, very gracious guy. I remember talking to him about when they chose to come to the Metro Detroit area to play a tough schedule, to play some teams. I mean, they showed up. But it's ironic that right now I just saw Georgia State versus Gonzaga. You know, right now Gonzaga's up 72-58. But I use Gonzaga as an example, and Terry, I think you may know where I'm going with this. You have these teams that have these, outstanding regular seasons, and they just run through people, but they don't finish. Now, here's what I have to say. And again, I say this with all due respect to Coach Lewis and his team, and I think it's a fair point to make. I was down there watching when they were over at, North Farmington Extravaganza. They were one of the teams that beat North Farmington that finished their season 18-3, the other night. If you're not a state champion, what does the hype really matter in that regard? You know what I'm saying? It's like, let's just see what happens. And it would be great if Michigan could crown someone in the state championship, and we'll see what it's like. Our guy, Mr. Wilson, we couldn't get him in the building. We got to get his media credentials set up down in the Detroit area. He said, what's their guard play looking like? March Madness guard play. You just
yeah, it's pretty experienced, and I think a lot. Going back to your point real quick, I feel like I just feel like right now Williamson, knowing what the talent they have this year, Coach Lewis did take them to Detroit just to give them that feel, because they know getting those experiences and winning those games with the adversity leads to a deep run in March. I mean, we see
those are the teams that you play late in the tournament.
Exactly. Teams you play deep in the tournament, you might get a mismatch that isn't really your favorite. You want to see how your team works out with. That's why you see the preseason tournaments in college basketball. You take Michigan to Maui, MSU to Atlantis. That's what it's for.
Don't get me started on that State Farm. I get about that pre-Final Four they do, that money grab. But anyway, go ahead.
But that's what it's for, though. Like the beginning of the year from about November to January, right before conference play, you just want to see how your team reacts. You put them in a back-to-back. State might play someone Wednesday, then they play someone Sunday. How does your team react with that big gap? So I think, Coach Lewis understands that. I think Mason Dox is a great guard. I think Jacob Wallace is a really great scorer. I just think that team is really well put together, and I think could lead to a deep run. But I think along, too, what they do in the summer does help because Coach Lewis respects the AAU game. He understands that with the proper AAU team and the proper organized basketball outside of high school is very critical to what applies in high school games. And I think, it's just a well-oiled machine in Williamson.
Yeah, and I think one thing that's pretty obvious, too, with the way they travel down to North Farmington, they have great community support. And I think that goes a long way, because Williamson, the city, if you will, is behind the team compared to, a team in Detroit or a Metro Detroit team where there are factions and things like that. I'll pose this question to both you and Albert and even Rod, Mr. Wilson, as he chimes in. And Latasha, we want to say, hey, back to you as well. Appreciate you hyping us up all the way down in Ohio as well. Here's the question.
Yeah. Is
it championship or bust for Williamson? If they don't get a championship, it's a bust? I mean, can we say that? Or is that too extreme? Can, falling short, in the Final Four still be considered enough? Or with all the hype and what y'all have going on, it should be a championship or nothing less?
Oh, for sure. I mean, just the whole storyline of Mason Dox coming back from Texas to, be the guy that helped Williamson get over that hump this year. I think it's definitely championship or bust. You have a ton of talent. 4 solid seniors on your team, and you really don't know what's left of Williamson after this year. This has always been those 4 guys. It's always been Mason Docks, Wallace, Max Hunt, and in my year it was Cook. You know what I'm saying? It just keeps going and going. And I'm not really hearing in the streets about another player in Williamson right now. I mean, maybe one could transfer there. I'm not sure. But right now, this is kind of like the end of the big hype around their team right now. So I think it only ends well with a championship. I think if they don't get there, I think it's going to be another disappointment just because of the storyline of bringing guys in and trying to send them off on top.
Yeah, I think that's something. Now, I can appreciate everyone's comments on that. And I know we got a few questions that are ready for our tournament section. There's a Brittany Griner question laying in the cut waiting for you, Terry. So I appreciate everybody. I will go back and give a formal recognition to our sponsors again. The irony, I was with my guy, Horatio Williams, just on yesterday. Shout out to H. And April 11th will be the coaches forum. I'm going to talk about that in 1 second. That's part of one of our segments. Also, Gilead Sciences, as well as Dick's Sporting Goods. I was in my other favorite store today. Went to Staples to get an ink cartridge, but I was in Dick's the other day with my daughter and having a good time. Going to the next segment, Terry, we put out there Drew was going to be in the building. Coach Drew, that's right. Drew Valentine will be is being added to the Rachel Williams Annual Coaches Forum. I think that's a great look for Lansing. He's doing great things. He got a little plug with a young man coming out of Ferndale High School that's going to be headed that way. So shout out to my guy, Coach Juan Rickman and the Ferndale Falcons for all that they're doing and getting ready. But I think it's great having the youngest NCAA Division I head coach to be part of the program. It's also going to be Cincinnati's head coach, MHSA director Will McCord. Speaking of Kelsers, the brother of Raymond Kelser, who just on, Greg Kelser, who played in that backcourt with Magic Johnson, will be the moderator as well. And lastly, you're going to have Troy Weaver, NBA GM for the Detroit Pistons. Man, you cannot beat that lineup and what we have going on, man. And lastly but not least, shout out to Eastern Michigan University. Stan Heath will be in the building. I was side by side with his assistant coach, Drew Denisko, who was actually, on the Michigan State staff, and he and I, were watching that finals game. I put him up on a nice place to grab something to eat. Ray, if you listen, I said the Eastern coach over to Lou's Deli on the way back, headed towards the Ypsilanti area. But no, that's going to be a great thing, and I encourage those in the Lansing area to come on down and support your guy, Drew. It's going to be a great function at the MGM Casino. There'll be food. It's a $20 donation, but you can't beat that. There'll be food, all other kind of things you want to do. Great camaraderie, and SBS will be in the building. So with that being said, I won't stay too long on that. I'm watching the time. Terry, what we have next? What's your thoughts on Coach Drew? I mean, he grew up in the area, and you hear about him. He's had success and fame. He's part of that Valentine family. Shout out to his dad, Carlton. Of course, shout out to his brother, Denzel. What's your thoughts on Coach Drew, and what does it mean when you hear someone like him from the Lansing area having this kind of success?
Well, yeah, just put on for the city, and just him being in that Loyola Chicago. When they had that deep run and ended up losing to Michigan in the Final Four, he was a part of that coaching staff. Like hearing the conversations, having those relationships with players, donors, all that kind of stuff helps your team, especially when you take over. And I think no doubt about it. Whenever Loyola's coach stepped down, there was no question that Drew was going to get that job. He's young. He's fierce. He knows what it takes to win. And, it looks like the same Loyola team that they defend well. They shoot the ball well. And I just think that, they have a great chance to beat Ohio State just based off their scheme. They don't let you do what you want to do well. And it sounds like very easy and it sounds like obvious, but like to actually execute it and actually move together.
They don't let you do what you want to do well. I heard that. I like that.
Yeah, and just like when they played Michigan State, Malik Hall had an amazing game. But if Hall doesn't have that game, Loyola beats Michigan State in Atlanta. So I mean, Loyola's a tough team. I mean, they just bring guys in according to their schemes and how they want it to work. So I love it. I mean, just a way to bring and connect the mitten together. And just to kind of give some local shout out, a guy that's about an hour, his hometown's an hour away, doing his thing, the youngest coach in the tournament. So just showing him some love.
Yeah, I want to give a special shout out, another local shout out to Dr. Brian Beverly, been a good friend for a very long time. He made a comment, and I can't get it out of my head, and I find myself repeating it, and I think there's a slight bit of merit to it. He said Drew Valentine should be in consideration Michigan State's head coaching job when Tom Izzo retires. A lot of people started pushing back, wait, but I looked at it like I said, hey, we don't know when that's going to be.
I know.
but if Drew finds some success, he meets the Michigan State, pedigree. He didn't play for Michigan State, but he was on the coaching
grad assistant.
He was a grad assistant there.
Yep.
He had success. And then when you look at these young coaches, it's like, because I look at it like this. You go scour the country when time is done, let's say 3 to 5 years, to get who to come in to replace him when you can get another young guy that's going to have that kind of support to do all that. So I just put that out there, man. With that being said, but staying on the college still, let me jump on Deion's Hoop Page comment. And I was kind of alluding to that. I said, is this the year Gonzaga finally wins it all? No. I like Chad Holtby, but you got to be like, no. They might not even make. They might get popped by the Sweet 16 because what have they shown us? They have one of the easiest leagues to play in, Pepperdine. Who else they end up playing in their league? They get on up in here and they march their way down and they lay an egg. They lay an egg in the national championship game, and I'm sick of it. I got nothing for them as it relates to that, So. Well, I got something else we got to look at. This is a pretty good one. Shout out to Anthony Brown. He said, so Orlando Walker must be on paid leave, LOL. He ain't been on the show in ages. He must be a big wig. We miss Orlando. Yeah, Orlando really got us jammed up in some contractual issues. See, we signed a contract where we got in over our head because, see, Orlando is also a great women's basketball coach. So when Orlando got caught up in the season, his contract still allowed for name recognition and all these type of things. But now I say that joke to Anthony Brown. We do miss Orlando, and to be honest, I was kind of waiting for him to appear. But we're sure we'll get him back. His hands are full, and he has been a significant part of the SPS Edge Show, as well as being a great colleague and a great friend and somebody to call on. But Orlando got some stuff in the works too. He's always tinkering. So we kind of keep with the college basketball piece. I do want to add 2 things. What's your think? To Deion's Hoop Page comment, is this the year? No, Deion, what you think? Even the fact that the question itself seems to be like, hey, I don't even know. What you think, Terry?
I actually picked them to win this year.
Really? Okay, my bad.
Yeah, I picked them to win. I really like I think their region is tough. I think if they can get out the region, they have a really great shot. So I think, Gonzaga, they score the ball well. They're coached by who I think is a Hall of Fame coach. Chet is an animal in the middle. But one thing I love about them, they're very efficient. They get to the rim really, really well. And I think that their guards are experienced. They're a team that knows what it takes to win again. And they have that pedigree where it's like, we're here. I'm sure they get all the time. We play a weak schedule, but I think, same thing with them taking their lumps in the beginning of the year, losing to Alabama, having some tough losses. I'm sure they learned and they took what they can to be well prepared for March, because you won't be seeing a lot of those teams. But later on in the season, as fatigue kicks in, hopefully not any injuries, but, you're ready for anything that happens. And I think Gonzaga knows exactly what they're doing to get back into that title game and finish what they left off from last year.
Well, it is so awesome. I don't know if there was a setup that Deion put that out there, knowing that you had picked Gonzaga, and I had the thoughts I had. Well, Skip and Shannon, they always bet their case to do. Let's just have a friendly wager. What you think? Because I'm going to dig in on what I'm on, because for me, it's like all they got to do is just lose any game. For you, they got to win it all.
I know. That's what I'm like. See, I'm so it's really like my upsets kind of led me to picking them.
Yeah,
coming into it, I was like, oh man, I really don't have a favorite. And so as I'm picking and going through it, Gonzaga ended up being the favorable matchup in my bracket.
So that by default,
a little bit by default, but it was more so of like, who do I feel comfortable with right now? Because as you see, Iowa goes down. People are saying, I'm in a friendly bracket right now in ESPN. I see people having Iowa in the Final Four. I'm like, are you nuts? Like, I didn't even pick that. So it's more of like by default who I end up picking at the end. So I can say Gonzaga confidently, but my stomach still turns a little bit after seeing them kind of get off on a slow start this game right now.
What we could do, we can call the audible right now because we're pretty much into Tourney talk. Shout out to Tay Anderson. We haven't seen her in a while. She said, "Hey, fellas, long time." Yep, that's right. Just throwing my head in with a question you can answer in college segment. How far does Michigan State go? And congrats on Michigan. They won today. I got Kentucky win it all. I like that Kentucky. Kind of like how you got Gonzaga almost by default. I keep glancing at Kentucky like, man, it's been enough time. You know what I'm saying? It's like it's been enough time. Yeah. But also the Michigan State point, I think Tom got a little irritated with me the last time I saw him when I was asking a question about the impact his former players can have. In this case, it was, referring to Foster Lawyer, knowing their scheme, pretty much being a assistant coach for a brief period of time. People respect his coaching mind. And Tom was like, look, I don't want to make it all about Foster. But, I was pushing back like, come on, Tom, like, give us a little bit more. I mean, this is still a significant story. But shout out to my guy, Drew Danesco. He made a good point when we were together last night when he was down representing Eastern Michigan. We watched the game. He's like, dude, this is a tournament game. This is not like, preseason. Hey, bring in, the former players. Like, this is a tournament winner go home game. I get it, but even still, that was it. But with that being said, I probably next time I see Tom is out here on his AAU circuit, that should be great. But I see them. You see their setup is more likely going to beat Davidson, and also matching up against Michigan State, and matching up against Duke. Let me tell you something. The way it's been going, I'm reminded of last season when Tom Izzo and Michigan State went to Cameron during the pandemic and they beat Duke. And I'll never forget this. I think I had maybe the third question post-game to Tom, and I forget what the question was, but Tom was so excited, Terry. He was so excited that, like, 15 minutes into the press conference, he called me out again. Ain't that right, Lindsay? Ain't that right?
I remember that, yeah.
Excited. So what I'm saying is there was blood in the water when UNC went in and stomped them boys out, for their final game at Cameron. Everybody crying and all that. And there's nothing to say that a Michigan State team could not beat Duke for this matchup. I'm just saying, it's just out there. What do you think, Terry? How far do you see Michigan State going, to Tay-Tay's point?
I think they're gonna lose at Duke, man. I just don't think Michigan State can keep up with Duke on, in the inside, as far as defending them, trying to score with them. I think Banchero is just too much of a beast. And I think Duke's season ends against Texas Tech. I just think that Texas Tech's ability to really just defend. They have this thing where it's called don't let anyone get into the middle, where they kind of have a guy that's sagging. And it works every time because they communicate well. Their shifts, and they also got some transfers in. So a lot of experience, guys that had not necessarily been in these big moments, but have been playing college basketball for a while. So I think that helps too. But I just think that Coach K's, farewell tour ends in the Sweet 16 against Texas Tech.
Oh, wow. I tell you what, man, you add Duke, this being an unprecedented year. Somebody posed a question a while ago, and some of my colleagues agreed. Is there too much pressure on this team?
Yeah.
Damn, dog. Ain't like Coach K came in, man, they couldn't even say his name correctly in the intro for his press conference. And now you're talking about, arguably the greatest coach in college basketball. Some argue one of the greatest coaches ever.
Yeah.
And you got to be the freshman to the national championship for the last game. Just do that. Right. Even the whole thing of having the last home game with UNC, which is, part of the course, but just the big to-do and everybody coming in like, oh, yeah, and by the way, beat your rival. Just like whatever. Yeah. It's like, I just think sometimes we get so caught up and we forget that sports, man, is just on a whole different level. What did Netta Johnson say? No question, just showing some Detroit love. Watch the show. That Detroit in the building, like, what's up? Got that love. Got Lance again, Detroit love. Appreciate you, Netta. Last thing on the college segment, shout out again to Deion Hoops page. We really appreciate it. He said, did you see Imani Bates play today? So if there was any question about what's going on, did you catch a glimpse of Imani playing, Terry?
I did a little bit. He had a nice 3-pointer earlier in the game. I don't know what he finished off with points-wise, but I think it's really cool to see. A lot of people were questioning allowing him to play. Will it mess up their chemistry? Is it a distraction? And obviously it wasn't. Memphis actually played really well today. They didn't turn the ball over as much. They made clutch free throws down the stretch. They didn't let Boise State's run scare them, and they just kind of they gave it, they entertained it a little bit, and then they put it away. So I just think that, Imani, I mean, he's obviously going to come back next year, but it's good to see that he's getting some stability. Maybe ate his humble pie, and was able to let that sit in his stomach for a bit. It's okay. I mean, but I think he's still young. As we hate to say all the time, he is still young. He can be there, and I think it's a good opportunity for him to learn and say that Memphis doesn't have a deep run and get to the Sweet 16. I think that'd be great experience and good for the culture of Penny Hardaway. It gets some pedigree and put some respect on their team's name.
I like that, Terry. I love it, man. I love it. To Roderick Wilson, my guy, Mr. Wilson's point, he said play 3 minutes. I think there's a strategy in that too, because it's like, let me get this dude some tournament minutes. Yeah. So at the end of the day, when he goes back home or whatever, and shout out to Penny Hardaway for how he's kind of managed. We got a clip of Penny cussing people out. You know what I'm saying? At one point to say, hey, man, this is what's going on, and to turn around and have the success. So I guess my question to you, Terry, is what is considered success for the Penny Hardaway program and the Memphis Tigers this year? Is it Sweet 16? Is that enough? If they lose their next game, are we going to be okay with that and keep it moving? Hold on. I just can't help it, though. I just can't help it.
Penny, have you ever lost faith that you can get this done?
At Memphis?
Yeah. In the first half like that, when it's unfolding, is it embarrassing? And
I think the one thing I can say to this media, because this media gets kind of fucked up sometimes when it comes to me, we don't have our full roster. Y'all know we don't have our full roster. Stop asking me stupid fucking questions about if I feel like I can do something. If I had my roster like they did, then I feel like I can do whatever I want to do. I'm coaching really hard. My boys are playing really hard. I'm not embarrassed about nothing. We have 4 freshmen starting. Y'all need to act like it. Act like we got 17 to 18 and 19-year-olds out here trying to learn how to play against 22, 23, and 24-year-old guys. Come on, man. Stop disrespecting me, bro. Like, don't do that. I work too fucking hard. I work way too hard for that. Y'all write all these bullshit articles about me, and all I do is work. We got young kids on the floor. They got young kids on the floor.
It's a quick turnaround going to Tulsa. What's the mood of the team like?
I love it, man. Good help it.
Yeah,
go back to that moment and now.
Yeah, it just
look at Mr. Wilson. He said, "Woo!" He said, "Whoa, I never heard this."
I mean, it just shows, man. It just shows like he understands. He people are getting on him in January. And, it's not even March yet, and they come on this miraculous run, get to the American Championship game, and they fall short. But then it shows that energy, that enthusiasm isn't going anywhere. They're able to get a big win, which I think is a complete win this year. I think, Penny was saying that, man, they kind of just asked me to make it to the tournament and kind of bring Memphis basketball back on the map again. And I think him having that pride for Memphis makes that job easy. But we're talking about Imani and all this. I just think it's going to take everybody to beat Gonzaga. It's going to take everyone. It's going to take Imani playing his 5 minutes really strong. It's going to play for Duran to play really strong in the middle, Lomax, all those guys. It's going to take everyone to beat the #1 seed. And I think Penny's right on the mark, man. He's enjoying it. He's having fun. And I mean, I don't expect them to go anywhere in the coming years because, Larry Brown, which they gave him a great tribute in the game, saying how he's been such a great foundation, a mentor, a father-like mentor to Penny as he's coaching and trying to put this team back on the map. So it just shows, man, you give this guy some time and some talent, man. It's a lot that's gonna come. And he was killing it with James Wiseman before too. Yeah. So it's like Wiseman couldn't finish the year.
But shout out to Ray Kelser again, and I'm sure Ray, I know you get this with your great wide broad swath of basketball that you've been involved in on every level. Here's the thing, man. That's the difference when you hire somebody who is not scared to lose that job. Meaning, anybody else, who didn't have something to fall back on, hasn't been on a high stage, they would never go in like that. And the Penny was kind of like, come on, dog, I'm Penny, whatever. And I just think that's what happens when you have someone, and being a member of the media, you're right, you can get it twisted a lot. You know what I'm saying? And that's the response that you end up getting. Shout out to my guy, James Wu Payne. Hey, him and Henry Ford College played on the national scale. They fell short, but you had a very successful season, winning the state of Michigan, being the best college team, community college team in the state of Michigan. Shout out to you, James Payne, Wu Payne, my guy. Yeah, Ray, absolutely. I appreciate that. I mean, because some people be shaking their boots, and who knows? I mean, so Penny was able to put on that, Memphis versus everybody T-shirt and go ahead and get to it. Tommy Dollar, $10 Tommy, my man. He said Penny deserves some credit. He figured out that the base circuits need to be put on hold and turn the season around. He did manage that, and I can only imagine when the book comes out, whenever it does, to hear what probably went on behind the scenes and what they had to do. You got to know it's going to be something. And $10 Tommy also said Durant will break Chet in half. Oh, well, yeah. Well, don't say that to Terry. Terry ain't trying to hear that.
I just say it won't just be Chet, though. I mean, Gonzaga plays really good team defense. Durant will have to go through 3 or 4 guys before he puts up a shot. But yeah. I do agree, one-on-one, Durant does have a great chance. But Chet is no punk, though. As we seen when Chet played Imani at Concordia on that nationally televised game, man, Chet will whoop on him. I mean, it's just like Chet will play well.
And he grew up playing ball with a lot of brothers on the circuit. And he is totally plays trash talk. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. For the sake of time, what we have going on, the women's tourney, we're not taking anything away from the women's tournament, but there was a question posed specifically for you earlier, Terry, regarding Brittany Griner and what is going on. Shout out to my guy, Kevin Marshall. What's up, brother? How you doing, good brother? Shout out to the Bearcats, and also shout out to your growing podcast, More Than a Coach. I know you're doing some major things with that. We appreciate you as well, good brother. The question was posed to you was, what are your thoughts on Brittany Griner? They've given her an additional 2 months of detainment in Russia, and you don't know if that's a political thing right now. You would think Russia, with all the scorched earth, they'd be down to support people, but they're giving her an additional 2 years. And I'll go even further. I wonder if that is more of a political move against the United States, but also just, and I put it out there, say it, against the LGBTQ community. I just wonder. I know it's a loaded question, but this question was specifically for you, referred to you as the young fella. Kind of like, I know if you ever seen Purple Rain, they used to call Prince the Kid, that's a term of endearment. But what do you think about the Brittany Griner situation?
Man. So I think, I don't really know how much this has to do with what's going on. It easily could be. But I think it's just so dangerous, man, because I think a lot of people are bringing up some very interesting points. Why does she even have to go there? Because they're not paying her well here, which I think is a fair argument, a fair thing to say.
Yeah, why is she over there? Like, 'cause she got to work to eat. She got to work.
Right. And they're paying her significantly, more money over there. So I think it just goes to say that, like, you always have to be mindful of what's going on. Now, granted, everyone makes mistakes, but some mistakes, are get a lot more. There are a lot more consequences to certain mistakes. So, especially in certain countries, you're in a communist country. They're monitoring everything. They're looking at everything. I don't even know how she was able to have that in the communist country.
You know what? One could argue, and I could be wrong. One could argue, and shout out to Al Harrington with Viola, that's part of her healing process.
It's true.
It's not necessarily said, and I don't want to get shot down over that. One can argue, and the reason I bring up Al Harrington is shout out to him and Viola and what they're doing. Al has really pushed the league to end up trying to relinquish the idea that CBD or anything like that can be considered like a level 2 type drug that can lead to some problems or whatnot. Kevin's chiming in on that too. He said that's a sad situation over there.
Yeah,
hope politicians step up and help hear her in her prayers actually as well. Shout out to you. And I also want to just shout out again to Ray for shouting out James Wu Payne. I totally agree. He said James Wu Payne is one of the best recruiters around. He's on the come up. And let me just add, I know we're kind of jumping, but to Ray's point about Wu, these coaches out here, man, and got all these kids at home talking about I'm going D1. Look, the portal has changed the game. portal has changed the game, and you will not get the same type of D1 looks and offers compared to going to. I'm with these college coaches on a regular basis, and y'all be poo-pooing, no pun intended, my man Wu Payne, when he try to come holler at you with Henry Ford College. They competing on a national scale. They're clearly the best community college in the state of Michigan. And y'all poo-pooed and waiting on some D1 offer to fall out the sky. That's not going to come when they're looking at grad transfers, et cetera. So that's my little statement. And I'll come back to you in 1 second. I want to get Anthony Brown. He said, and about the NCAA tournament, people don't know the pressure of it. One and done and the nerves people have, but the great players rise and weak players crumble. And he's, it's huge. It's huge all the way around. So, Terry, to finish up your point on that, I just say that it definitely seems like it's political, but that question was posed directly to you. And like I said, it sheds a light on so many other things that are happening in sports. Do you have anything else to add on that? I know we kind of jumped around a little bit.
Yeah, it's just you got to always be mindful of situations. And it couldn't have been, just the timing of it, just with war breaking out there and the U.S. putting sanctions on Russia, and now all of a sudden, a player is arrested there. I think politicians will step up, but there's just a lot of talking and a lot of, sneaking around, maybe some money, just a lot of things will happen. It reminds me of the LiAngelo Ball situation, how we were able to, have him come back home here. But, man, it's scary stuff, man. And I can only imagine what's going on mentally and just physically over there. We don't know. We only know that she's being detained. We really don't have much in depth of what's going on with her. What is she doing? What is she doing inside the jail? We don't know. So just prayers up, man. Hopefully the politicians, like Wu was saying, step up and try and do what they can to get her here, because it's something that here is not as severe, but again, it's just like you have to understand what country you're in. They're a lot more strict and conservative than we are. We're a lot more lenient and letting, not letting this stuff happen, but like we're a lot, with our laws with marijuana and, with those oils, it can be a healing process. And a lot of people have accepted that. But Russia is one of those where it's like, dude, it's our way or the highway. And you get caught in a situation like that, it's hard to overcome, as we're seeing.
And you don't even know if that was a setup, if they were familiar with her lifestyle prior to, and they just waited to have some leverage. One can even argue, is she considered a prisoner of war, considering they engaged in something like that? So James gives us a shout out. He shout out Ray Kelso and myself for the love. I appreciate you both. We got to give you love, man. You out there grinding, getting it done. Shout out to Coach Kevin Marsh. He said, I tell my boys they better think small as long as it's a school and it's paid for. They got to get it. Yeah, man, they be delusional, man. The kids be delusional. And Wu signs off on your point, too. He said, great point, Terry, for sure. This is a good thing, Terry. Do you have anything you want to add on the women's tournament? Let's not overlook Iowa and Caitlin. Let's not overlook Paige Buckers coming back. I want to make sure we give enough attention, well-deserved attention to winning. What stands out to you about the women's tournament right now?
I'm nervous because that Iowa team reminds me of this Iowa team, with Kenneth Murray kind of being the one-head monster. Bohannon can, of course, shoot from the three, but
Bohannon?
He was asleep. And, the McCaffrey boys were here and there, but that team with Caitlin Clark, man, it just seems like, she's such a great player and she causes so much attention. The other players around her have to step up. And I think the same with South Carolina, with Leah Boston playing so well in the middle. The players on the perimeter have to step up. So I think now we're seeing, where, teams, in women's basketball, it's going to be so fun to watch because there's always an upset. Again, it's matchups. But, UConn going to make it as far? We don't know. But I think it's always so fun with women's that we get to hear more stories. We get to hear more of the traditions. And my mom and my sister used to always go to the women's Final Four games. That they've been to a couple of them. And they come back with stories. It was a girls' trip, so I wasn't allowed to go. But it's all good. But it was always.
You and Terry got to take a boys' trip. You know what I'm saying?
We are. We going to that Notre Dame Ohio State game this upcoming year. So I guess dope. All that I guess that equals that 2 trips to Final Four is 1 Ohio State game. So, but, cool. I'm just excited, man, just to see the upsets happen and just really see women's basketball put on that pedestal. As we're watching it, and I get engaged even more in the women's tournament more than the regular season, of course, but I think it's just really cool to see, conference championship teams that are fighting for their recognition, playing at UConn and playing at South Carolina. I can argue that those teams are thinking like, hey, look at us, give us a shot. If we beat a UConn or South Carolina or a Baylor, we can get that publicity we deserve. So
think about what that Kentucky upset over South Carolina did for a lot of teams.
Exactly.
And that's some chalkboard talk for those coaches. That's some bulletin board talk for them coaches. Like, look, anything can happen. Do what you're supposed to do. Shout out to Kevin Marshall again. He said, go Gamecocks. The Michigan girls were shocked. They're doing an outstanding job. Michigan women's basketball, that is for sure. Let's give a quick holler again to our sponsors. As we kind of stated earlier, they are the lifeblood of this process. We all love sports, but it's a process to that. And if you don't have the right kind of sponsors and support, man, you just cannot continue to go on and do the things that you may want to do. So, again, shout out to my folks, starting with Mr. Horatio Williams.
You back in just a second.
My apologies, folks. I take complete responsibility for that. Fingers not moving right, but so not to do that again, I'm not going to pull them up. But I do want to again shout out Horatio Williams, man. That's my guy. We were together. He was at some of the games too, and we're going to be together in the coming weeks. Gilead Sciences as well as Dix. I want to get into the last few segments for the sake of time. Let's talk a little basketball. Some guys been going off. I forget who may have said it. I don't want to go too LeBron heavy because I know somebody. Oh, let me go back to what they said about LeBron.
School was like, y'all better talk about the Lakers.
Yeah, hey, I appreciate.
I respect it.
Hey, let me go back. Because I know he'd be looking at the post. Here you go. That's Deion who's paid. He said, "Oh, LeBron James and his Lakers shaking my head." You want to be like Bubba Dub? Trash. He say, "We all keep waiting for the king to lead them, but they have only 2 wins since the All-Star break." Pat Bev and Cap was clowning the Lakers and Westbrook last night. Who would ever have thought the mighty Lakers would be laughing stock with LeBron on the team? Deion Hoops page. There's not one word you wrote that I disagree with. It's the truth. It's right. But for whatever reason that I continue to promote LeBron is that he's just still so great despite all of that. And that 56-point night he had the other night, I think was a catalyst for Kyrie to be like, oh, okay, let me go ahead and drop 60. And you cannot, and the question I was going to pose to you, Terry, was, is this in any relation to what LeBron did? With Kyrie doing what he did, the Cat doing what he did. I mean, is this all trickle-down effect, if you will, or were these things triggered by LeBron James coming out and doing what he did the other night? What you think?
A little bit, man. I just think that this year in the league, it's just so many players, great players are having these great stretches. It's been a great year for NBA basketball. Kyrie being able to play. And Kyrie just has these nights, man, where he's just untouchable, man. It's almost a Kobe-like night where he's just like, I can do whatever I want. I can dribble, shoot from anywhere, and it's going in. It's bottom.
Can I add something to that? And this can go two ways, but I just put this out there. Could it be argued that he has an unfair advantage, or the reason why he can have this kind of explosion is he's a part-time player? One could argue, oh, he ain't playing as much because he can't play at home, so his game would be off. But another argument could be his legs are fresher. He hasn't had the full NBA post All-Star break type run that everyone else is, so he can pull this out of his bag. And Deion Hoops page, I hope you listen. I couldn't help it. If Kyrie can do that by being a quote-unquote part-time player, yet LeBron is still doing what he's doing, I just couldn't help but put that out there. But what do you think about the idea that Kyrie's less games played can add to him being able to drop 60 with ease like that?
As much as we've seen all these people scoring, it's still – the NBA is still, the best players in the world. So I think it's still a challenge.
Any given night, these guys can do that.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where a guy like Kyrie, he just, when Durant and them see him, he's on that level tonight because he can always do it. And again, he is playing.
And you also consider they're playing Orlando.
This true.
This ain't the Shaq and Penny Orlando. Just like Deion Hoops page, all due respect to your point, just like those games he had was against who? That one game was against the Wizards, that second 50-plus game he had, and the other one was I
think it was Charlotte or something like that.
Say again.
I think it might have been Charlotte. I think he had a big game against Charlotte.
Okay. Yeah. But I don't know, man. I just see this in the league, and I wonder if people can argue, this is the league at its greatness, or it's like not really great basketball because you got one person being so ball dominant. I don't know. What do you think?
I think it's best, man. I think it keeps everyone's attention. I think with having these star players go off like this, with Jokic and Embiid, talking about the big man evolution and really just being happy to see centers get recognition. Cat balling now, Tatum bringing up the market in Boston. So I think it's really cool right now.
Yeah, they're still saying Boston may be contenders for the Eastern Conference Championship. What do you think about that?
And they put something together. They got Derek White. They got pieces right now that are definitely putting something together.
How much does coaching impact that?
I guess one could say Brad Stevens is still on the staff.
I was going to say, was good old Butler Brad over his head at the time?
Yeah, and I definitely thought that Brad Stevens definitely overcoached at times. But people have been talking about, man, breaking up the duo of Brown and Tatum, and I think both of them understand, like, man, things aren't always better. And then Tatum in the podcast where JJ Redick was talking about how everyone thinks the grass is greener somewhere else. Mm-hmm. I want to grind and get it here because if I go, say, to Washington and play with Bradley Beal, I don't know if it's going to be that much better. I don't know. It could be worse or it could be better. But he knows right now the situation of what he's in. And Marcus Smart is the heartbeat of that team. Marcus Smart makes winning plays. He's what we think Pat Bev is, but he actually does that. Bev
Marcus Smart be Marcus Smart on any other team, or is it just like Draymond Green being Draymond Green on the Warriors compared to Marcus Smart being somewhere else?
I think more so Marcus Smart could be who he is more so than Draymond could be who he is on any team, because at the trade deadline, whenever the Celtics were struggling, teams were trying to get Marcus Smart because they understood his leadership. They understood that he understands the game. He has a role right now where he isn't ball dominant. He can impact games without the basketball. And he's not really an attention seeker guy. He just does what it takes to win. And those are the 3-and-D kind of guys that you would love on your team. Can bring more than just the outside shot and defense. They bring the vocals. They bring the IQ, the winning plays. And so I think, with him being in the center, being that heartbeat, I think it's allowed and it has enabled Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and Al Horford stepped up too. Big Al was down there balling, man. It just shows that, man, they're really putting pieces together, and they wouldn't be who they were without. They wouldn't be who they are without Marcus Smart.
Yeah, that's very significant. With the time we have, we made a little changes to the schedule going forward, but it's really great. We can still transition. GOAT talk. I wasn't able to get the image up, but I'll read it to you. And this is so cool. And this really, I remember I sent this to you one of them 3 a.m. nights, right, Terry? But I was going to read to you the conversation between LeBron James and Tom Brady. Just that line alone, the communication between Tom Brady and LeBron James. This is Tom Brady talking. He texted me, "Hey, we're the best ever at what we do. We're competing with each other at this point." When he dropped 54 or whatever the other day, I texted him back, "All right, I'm coming back." So it seems like LeBron James was the catalyst for Tom, like, "I'm coming back." And people can argue this, but these are Tom Brady's words. Like, that's a different level of, how should I say, competitiveness, where you can be in a different sport, but look at someone competing. It's on 7 o'clock. So you're like, damn, LeBron, 38, he's the oldest dude in the league, he's still doing that. And Tom probably said, I can still do it too. But it's amazing to me what motivates people. Like I said, when I sent you that, man, I'm like, boom, that's GOAT talk. You know what I'm saying? It's like, no matter how you feel about Tom Brady, it's so ironic. Like, isn't this ironic? LeBron James and Tom Brady can be two of the most polarizing players in their particular sport. You either love them or you hate them both. You think about that. You know what I'm saying? And it ain't no in between. Like, how you feel about Tom Brady? They're like, oh, I love Tom Brady. Like, I can't stand him. How you feel about LeBron? I love LeBron. I can't stand him. But those two together have a level of connection that's a literal connection. Like, dude, what up? Hey, we out here doing, like, oh, dude. And it's not like, yeah, my man went through my other guy to get me the time. Like, we talking. Like where did that come from? Like we communicate like me and you communicate. Terry, you sent me something earlier that like, yeah, hit you back. So the way me and you talking, Terry, LeBron James, and Tom Brady are talking, and say what you want to say. For at least for me, prior to that, you couldn't have told me that they got down like that. You couldn't have been like, oh yeah, LeBron and Tom just text, just whatever. Enough. And lastly, I'll say this, Terry, before I defer to you, and I think it's something to be said. This for you, Deion Hoop Page, just to mess with you a little bit, number love. At the end of the day, LeBron James inspired Tom Brady to come back and play football. So how you go? I mean, you can't just overlook that for whatever it's worth. What you got, Terry?
I mean, I think that it's funny that this came out because you always hear those two fire back at each other about stuff like this. Like, oh man, dude, you really killing it. You 36, still doing this. And Brian hits up Brady, man, you 40 years old, still balling, doing this. They see it, and I think they realize that they're in a unique category of athletes, man, that are still playing really well. Not a lot of guys can say, man, I have been in the NBA longer than I have been alive. Brady can say that. Like, I mean, in the NFL, longer than I've been alive. Brian is getting close to, man, I've been in the NBA. He might already be there. I don't know. But LeBron may be saying, man, I've been in the NBA more than I have been alive. That is insane. It just shows, man, that, man, it's just a different level of competitiveness, that they respect each other's grind, because it's a lot of stuff, man, that we don't see that causes them and gets them to be able to get to this point.
You know, Terry, I think it's easy to downplay what you just said. I just want to interrupt. Do you know the level of trash talk that is for somebody to say to a cat, "Hey, dog, I've been in this league longer than you've been alive"? What comeback can you have if somebody say, "I've been balling here, football, basketball, whatever, longer than you've been on the earth"?
Him and himself too. He's been in the league longer than Tom Brady, leading up to the age where he got into the league. Tom Brady has played in the NFL longer than before he got into the NFL. Like, no one, I don't think no one can say that, and it just shows, man, they're just a greater respect.
On top of that, it's not to say I'm just in it. I'm the most dominant person in it.
Right.
And again, the Deion's Hoop Page, I appreciate. I think that is why I hold LeBron in such high regard. Yeah, I know the Lakers are trash right now. Shout out to Bubba Dub. They're trash, right? I know they're trash right now. But I'm just still caught up in the show that's LeBron James and what he is. And to be honest, man, LeBron James wasn't on this team, man. Lakers like an expansion team right now. But it's ebb and flow. It goes like that. Terry, I'm watching the time. This has been a great hour. I'm trying to take advantage of the sun still being out now that we got daylight saving. I'm glad that we were able to touch on so many things. Kevin Marsh said, for this era, he is a GOAT, LBG. Yeah, and I think there's always a qualifier with it, as you know, with LeBron when you talk about other things, man, but you just can't hold him up. You know, you just cannot hold him up. Terry, before we get out of here, you got anything you want to say to wrap up on not just this topic, but the things we discussed or whatever we may have coming up in the future?
Yeah, I'm just really, excited for, obviously March Madness coming up. I mean, coming up now, and just having those games being played right now as we speak. So it's really cool to be able to turn on the TV, cook dinner. That's what I did. I came back home from work 4 o'clock. I pop on the Iowa game, and I'm listening to it as I'm making my, making some beef and some rice for dinner. So it's just really cool, man. It's basketball heaven. It only lasts for so long, as you hinted towards, man. It's only, I mean, just to think about it, man. We go from Sunday, and then they don't play again until Thursday. And I remember as a kid, that was the longest wait ever. I had to wait 3 days before I saw a Sweet 16 game, and watching ESPN guys talk about it all day, all night, just day and night, eat, sleep, basketball. And then we finally get to watch it. So it's just like, enjoy this now while we can. The latest game tonight is 9:57. I don't know if I'm going to stay up that late. I might catch it. But I'm just excited. It's basketball heaven, as Deshaun Tate said.
Yeah. Shout out to Deshaun and what he has going on. Deshaun's actually going to be in New Orleans for March Madness, so maybe we can be able to snatch him and bring him on during that time. That'll be pretty cool. I just want to say I appreciate you. I want to appreciate those who've been supporting the SPS Edge. The reason we've had a little inconsistency is because it's just what was stated earlier. I'm out here at these games, whatnot. Again, shout out to Kevin Marshall. So y'all brothers have a blessed day. You too, Kevin. We appreciate you. And, it's a good time. But I appreciate the support. Right now, Kentucky, number 2 seed, is getting ready to go up against St. Peter's, number 15 seed. You'll be watching. At least the Final Four team playing right now. But, hey, it's a great time. And lastly, I just want to tell everybody, hey, appreciate these moments that we have. Appreciate today. Tomorrow is not promised. And I appreciate you all. So with that being said, this is Lindsey Hudson with the SPS Edge Show and my guy Terry McCord Jr. We'll see you guys next week. Peace.